Hey, it's Drybear. We got an update from Larian Studios on the future of Baldur's Gate 3. They talk about patch 2 and beyond, which includes a final ending for Karlach that's not currently in the game, a way to remove lingering multiplayer companions in your campsite, and even the ability to change your avatar's appearance in the middle of a playthrough. So let's dive into it. But first, you should come hang out with me on my live stream. I'm live every single day on twitch.tv/Drybear. If you do come hang out with me in the Twitch community, then that bill you've been waiting on, that you've been dreading, is going to be way smaller than you thought it was going to be. And the update reads, hello all. Since launching last month, a ton of tweaks and updates had already been added into Baldur's Gate 3. They're referring to patch 1, where they had 1,000 bugs fixed and adjustments made and things cleaned up, but they recognize that it's not going to be the end. There's still a bunch of extra stuff that needs to be added to the game and things that needed to be done. They say they want to go further than that. We now find ourselves at a time where we're able to properly sit down and consider how to parse feedback beyond bug fixing and UX tweaks. Patch 2 is just around the corner, which is probably sooner than we think considering how fast patch 1 came online. And while it does include bug fixes, it also includes substantial performance improvements for the first time since launch. Perhaps more notably, we're adding better closure to the story's final act in the form of a more fleshed out ending for Karlach, something many of you have been asking for. So this is something that's been requested a lot. And actually, they even make mention in this note that they had longer ending scenes. And it's one of the things that I wish was in the game, is that after this epic 100-hour journey, I kind of wanted to see more of an epilogue of wedding scenes or combat scenes or other storylines being wrapped up or moved along. And I feel like sometimes the epilogue can be a little shorter. It's just like a conversation or a little acknowledgement of the story at the end. So they are adding in a story ending for Karlach, which is great. I want to take a moment to focus on a conversation some of you have been having in the background. Many of the points that come out in this conversation are being funneled into the umbrella term of cut content, as people are data mining and finding cutscenes and things like that that are in the files but aren't actually in the game in some cases. The first thing in the conversation is going to be performance, and this is big for a lot of people, especially as we welcome in console gamers into the mix. But the city of Baldur's Gate itself is ambitious, technically, narratively, and in scope. It's quite large. One of the biggest issues with creating games is that technology is always trying to keep up with your ambition. And he's just talking about how they made a lot and they want to make it as visually appealing as possible. But the more intensive it is, the more it costs in performance and the worse it potentially runs without perfect optimization. We know that Act 3's performance isn't as good as the first two acts, but the good news is that Patch 2 is bringing major performance improvements to the entire game, but more specifically to Act 3, where you feel it the most. And I actually have some performance issues on my not even that outdated machine in some areas of Act 1, like near the Knoll camp on the hillside, inside of Grimforge, near the lava. There's some kind of major FPS drops, and I'm also getting some degradation of FPS as I play longer and longer, where I have to restart my game to try and refresh that as well. The good news is that Patch 2 is bringing major performance improvements to the entire game, but more specifically to Act 3, where you'll feel it the most. We'll also be working throughout September to improve in performance in Act 3 further with new technology that's been taking a bit longer to release than we expect. We've seen your reports about Act 3 bugs, and we are as frustrated as you are as the bugs spoiling the experience. So we're dedicated to resolving these quickly. And as you've noticed by our hotfix and patch rollout, we're getting pretty fast. Our approach is that whenever blockers pop up, we either release a hotfix if a patch is not imminent, or we include the fix as part of a patch if there's a patch already on the way. And they expect more bug fixes to be coming in to patch 2 to help with some of these issues, specifically in Act 3. And obviously, I think the Act 1 was probably the most polished, mainly because they had the longest experience of testing and bug reporting on that from the early access. They also talk about user experience, how it feels to play the game, how you feel when you play the game, how the game looks, and how you interact with it. Baldur's Gate 3 is a game 3 years in early access and 6 years in the making. Many of the building blocks or ideas, tests, or however you want to refer to the junk data that falls outside of what we shipped with can and is being data mined. Absolutely is. That's okay, but it's important to understand that not every building block in the giant box of Lego is needed to create the experience we ultimately envision. And he's talking about just the content that we're finding in the game files through data mining, uncovering by digging into the files that come with the game, and things that we know aren't in the game or wondering why they were removed in the first place. And I feel like this is true if people could data mine movies or TV shows and find what was removed. bloopers and cutscenes and stuff like that. I think a lot of people, especially if they're a fan of that media, will always want to have seen what was removed from the game or the movie in that specific instance. We've seen 3 types of complaints that are being referred to as cut content. The first is content that's actually not cut, it's just not triggering properly. Specifically around Minthara as a companion, there's a bunch of bugs with that, where there's scenes or commentary that she should be playing but isn't, and they said that they are working on it, expect a fix for her and her reactivity soon. The second is the epilogue, which is what we mentioned earlier. What's been data mined is not really cut content, but content that we didn't want to release because we didn't think it worked. We're pretty strict with ourselves and our ideas. If it isn't good, if it isn't fun to play, it doesn't make it into the game. And one of the reasons why we trimmed the epilogue is because we were afraid the ending cinematics were becoming too long and would detract from the epicness of the experience, but clearly not everyone agrees with us. So we're going to do something about it. Now, when they were first talking about the overall length, when they had a media tour at the Larian offices last year, and at the start of the year as well, talking about the game, they actually mentioned that the ending cutscene can be as long as 15 minutes. And I was actually super excited about this because I feel like, again, if you're going to be playing an 80 to 120 hour game where you get close to characters and you're bonding and you have all this attachment to what's going on, I like having a long epilogue that brings it all together and sees those stories tied up. And I actually felt like, in general, without any spoilers, that some of the epilogues were just kind of abruptly short and difficult to kind of grasp. It's just a conversation on the side with the character that you have, and it didn't feel like it was long enough. So they said they're going to do something about it. We started expanding the epilogues, and you'll see the first results of that in patch 2 with the addition of a new optional ending with Karlach. It's fiery, poignant, and gives her the ending she deserves. The third is that the things we actually didn't plan for and those we once considered but ultimately didn't do. So scrapped content that got pulled from the game because they didn't think it fit. It was always our intention for the Upper City to be an epic cinematic epilogue, bringing the story of Baldur's Gate 3 to a close. But we didn't talk about that in advance because it would have been a major spoiler. We feel confident there's enough content in Baldur's Gate 3, the city itself, clocking in weeks-long playthroughs at a time. That's not to say Baldur's Gate 3 didn't see cuts just as every game does. It's just important to know that what we ultimately shipped was planned long ago in function primarily of making Baldur's Gate 3 fun to play, not for us to close development quickly. So they're kind of saying like, hey, anyone that says that Act 3 is rushed because we wanted to get it out the door, no, this is intentional and this is what we wanted. We wanted to make sure that it wrapped up the way that we were looking for. So they're saying it's not as a unfinished or unwanted thing. This is actually what they intended for the end. Baldur's Gate 3 is a game with many release dates, and despite us moving its launch up around a month, it's still a couple years late. It was late because we grew a team's ambition and ideas in function of it being the best game it could possibly be, and not every idea makes it into the final launch. We're happy with Baldur's Gate 3, and that Baldur's Gate 3 has resonated with a great many of you, but we'll never take that for granted. We're committed to tying up loose ends. So what can you expect from us in the future? First, we'll keep monitoring what bugs you encounter and make sure to fix them as fast as we can. Second, we'll make improvements based on the feedback you're giving us. Baldur's Gate 3 means so much to a great deal of you, and in turn, that means the world to us. So they'll continue following feedback and applying that into the game. They're also going to be launching Withers' Wardrobe of Wayward Friends, and this is a fix for people having co-op party members that join your party, but then don't join your multiplayer session again, and their character is left lingering in your camp and lingering in your game without being able to remove them. So there's going to be a Lion, Witch, and wardrobe spawned in the campsite where you can have those characters jump in the wardrobe and then they'll be sent off into the astral plane or the ethereal plane until that character decides to join again, which is pretty cool. They also mentioned that with this, they want to be able to give you the option to change the appearance of your avatar using the same wardrobe. So that is all coming soon in a patch near you. So they wanted to just kind of address that. So let's recap all of this. They're putting more bug fixes in patch 2, a final ending for Karlach that isn't in the game now that they think is going to be a nice option for you aside from the ones that already exist of the 6 or 7 endings that Karlach has, and give her a little bit more justice. Hopefully one that doesn't revolve her making a very difficult and painful grave choice in general. And they're going to be adding a wardrobe item or object in the campsite that you can use to remove friendly multiplayer characters, as well as the ability to change your avatar's appearance mid-run, so that if you don't like the way it looks, you don't have to start over. You can still have that option of customizability. So that is the update we got from them. Very exciting news. Let me know what you think down below. If you found value in the video, leave a like down below. Leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and I'll see you on my live stream. If you enjoyed yourself today, leave a like down below. You can support me and my work on Patreon and view Patreon exclusive content, link in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.